Welcome back, everybody. This is not a Malazan video. The daily Malazan video will be recorded in an hour or two because I still need to finish reading chapter 10 of Toll the Hounds. Today, I want to talk about something else. As a lot of you know, because I've kind of hinted at it, is I've revisited and reread the first Law trilogy by Joe Abercrombie. I'm done with it. There will be like another video on like my thoughts on the trilogy and everything, and then there will be the secret police torturing video as well in the next couple of days. But today I want to talk about why I don't like, or what I don't like about the depiction of Sand Dan Glokta and his disability, if you can call it that, and why it kind of disturbs me or makes me uncomfortable in a kind of some ways. And I figured that's something maybe one or two of you might be interested in. So let's do this. Cheers. Now, obviously, this will be slightly spoilery for the entire First Law trilogy, but I also figured that if you at this point don't know these things about the First Law, there's chances you'll never read and don't care about spoilers. So be warned. Of course, I need to talk about stuff that happens in the books when I want to talk about how that character makes me angry, uncomfortable, or whatever. So there's that. And so why do I have issues with that? It's not so much, I mean, it's slightly about the depiction of physical handicaps in general, but it's a lot about it is more about some of the consequences of that and why I have issues with that. So as I guess most of you hopefully know, I am blind. I mean, legally blind, which doesn't mean I see blackness, but you know, I'm legally blind. I can't read. I can't do things with my eyes normally unless it's like seeing if it's light or dark and some very minor other things. The other thing there is, I wasn't always blind. When I was 15, I could still ride a bicycle and read actual printed books until I was like 16, 17, sort of in that way. So I have the experience of someone of being able to see more or less like everyone else and losing that sight over time up to the point where I am at now. And this is like a continuing thing, so it might still get worse, although I'm not sure how much worse it can get actually. Why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this to understand, to, you know, give you some context on where my issues with Sand Dan Glokta come from, and why maybe I'm a bit more sensitive when it comes to this kind of topic. That's sort of where I'm coming from. So I'm obviously comparing, and this is, you know, something we can't help, or at least I can't help when I read books. Like, I try to take stuff out of there and, you know, put it into context with my own experiences, my own life, and so forth. That's just like how it works for me. It's like you have to write something very, very specific, like in a very, very weird way. So I can't actually, you know, take anything out of there. It won't work for me. Work for me at all once I understand the language it's written in. So there's that. So first of all, it is I remember when I first read the First Law, like years and years and years and years ago, the slightly edgy fact of having in a fantasy story, obviously I hadn't read that many fantasy books at that time compared to now, was like, wow, there's a cripple there. He used the word cripple, you know. There's someone who is not physically perfect in there, and he's also super evil because he's a torturer, or maybe he's not evil, and all of that. So the sheer edginess definitely blinded me, so to speak, to some of the more problematic aspects of that. I hope I can be excused. I was, you know, I'm a slow learner and I'm slow in almost every respect, so I was mentally still more or less like a 15-year-old at the time. And 15-year-olds, I guess, are always can be won over by edginess a lot. Not that I have changed that much over time. But there's that. So I also was even less like had done even less self-reflection on the whole topic of disability than I have by now, which is not, a ton, but, because I kind of avoid that topic most of the time. But it was even less. So it was interesting for me to reread the entire series now, the entire trilogy now, and just to see how I feel about it now, like, I don't know, 15, 16 years later. So there's that. And I found that I was really struggling with Sand Dan Glokta for a bunch of reasons. Now, the first bit is, and this is, I don't know, I guess it's the idea of his like physical handicaps, his disability, which is the result of torture, being portrayed so over the top. Now, don't get me wrong. I know that Joe Abercrombie, in general, is a man for the broader strokes. Like his entire world building, almost all of that is not exactly the most subtle, and that's fine. I do get that. I can enjoy parts of that a lot. I already said that I have problems with how the Gurkish are portrayed, but that's not the topic for today. I do get that this is his style, and he's painting his pictures in very bold, broad strokes, and but still and I do also get the idea of having like a bit of a shock value there when you describe how terribly destroyed by torture that man is. And that's, on the other hand, you can also look at the fact that, yes, torture in our real world also does that to people. It destroys people physically in a lot of ways. I get all of that. But still, I feel like, do we need to talk about how he wakes up covered in shit every morning? Is that really important? Is that really necessary to do that all the time? And like, do we need to like make him not only someone with physical disabilities, if you want to call it that, but do we have to like push it all the way into the grotesque? Is that really necessary? And I feel over time it's like sometimes a little less is more to make it feel more realistic. I don't know if realism is the right word there, but to make it feel more, I don't know. It just feels a bit overdone, a bit almost cartoonish in a way, and thus loses meaning for me at least. And yeah, don't get me wrong. I know there's probably people out there who have been reduced by torture, physical torture, to a state as broken as Sand Dan Glokta's. That's not the point that I'm trying to make. I'm trying to say that if, and this is sort of the first, not the first time, but like one of the very early times in a very, very popular fantasy series where that topic of physical limitation or physical brokenness is actually, tackled. And it just feels a bit ham-fisted in a way, or heavy-handed to me, and I didn't like that a lot. Because, I don't know, that's not how it is for most people. But, that's not my biggest issue with Sand Dan Glokta. Is not exactly just the portrayal of how fucked up he is. That's just a small bit of it. The more important bit is about his character and when we talk about how his maiming, his torture, and the results of that have impacted his character, his soul, and if you want to say that, or his mind. Because this is where we come to the point where it's, hits very close to home for me. In a way, now obviously he has suffered his disability, his maiming, his brokenness, basically through an external agent, and there is also an aspect of personal like guilt in there, because obviously he was the one who decided to go there and do that famous last stand. We have several points in the story where he and other people discuss that actually doing that charge, that bridge defense that got him into the hands of the enemy and into the prison where he was tortured, was a really dumb choice. It was foolhardy, to put it mildly, and we have that in there. Also, obviously, having torture inflicted on all of and your physical brokenness, the result of another human's action, leaves a lot more trauma, or a different trauma than suffering your, like, a disability because of no personal fault of anyone's, right? So in my case, that is the case. Like, I didn't do something dumb and then became blind. It's just a genetic thing, and then I'm fucked because of genes, which doesn't help me in the end, but that makes it more like, is a different case. So I'm not saying Glokta is like me and and Abercrombie got me wrong. That's not what I'm trying to say here. But my problem there is that when we read his character, and we have a lot of his, like, inner monologue, because that's, sort of Abercrombie's writing style, at least for the main characters that we see, which is, Logan Nine Fingers and Colin West and Sand Dan Glokta and Jezzel and Luther and all of those other people. We have a lot of their inner monologue or their worldview in there. And so we see that, like, Glokta's is a mix of self-pity, perpetuating his suffering, or justifying other people's suffering with his own suffering, or that no one cares about his own suffering, and so forth. And I see there's a problem. For me, there's a problem exactly in there, because Abercrombie is right. Like, even for someone like me, I have to fight off self-pity not every day, but most days, because it's very, very easy to fall into that trap when you suddenly realize that you have limitations that other people don't have. And there's basically nothing you can do to change those limitations. That's like the big deal there. That's sort of the things. Like, of course, I struggle with self-pity. I try to, not go down that rabbit hole, but I can't help it from time to time. I also know that it's very easy, if you're in that dark place, in a darker place, it's very easy to lash out and try to make other people miserable. So you, don't feel better, but it's sort of this, like, if other people are also miserable, you don't feel like as apart from other people in a way. It's difficult to explain that, I guess, or to word it properly. But the point is, if you're fucked up and you're miserable, or if I'm fucked up and miserable, it's human nature to see, like, everyone else is having this great life and they're all super happy and good, which they're most likely not, but that's a different thing. Well, I'm sitting here and I'm miserable because I'm, in my case, blind. So there is the temptation to make those people also feel miserable, because then everyone is miserable, so you don't feel left out or so apart from everyone else. So I get that. Those things make kind of sense. Now, obviously, I don't try to make other people blind, and the fact there is that, obviously, with him being a torturer, that possibility is there. He can just torture other people, and he does that a lot in the story. And that's sort of where we come to the point that I'm trying to make, why it makes me so, I don't know, angry in a way, or uncomfortable, both of it, most likely, because anger is usually my response to being uncomfortable. It's just like the kind of person I am, I guess. The point there is, it is something very, very human, especially, at least from my experience, for people with a handicap to deal with these emotions. And to see them portrayed in a character, but turned up to 11, so to speak, and with no real way out, because that's like the point up to the end of it. Glokta's still that guy. But there's also no, like, because that's the style of book that Abercrombie writes, there is no big morality or moral in there. He's still not the most despicable character in that story. And I feel it sometimes, for me, it feels like a slap in the face, because I'm trying to be, I don't know, a halfway decent human being. I'm trying to not fall into self-pity. I'm trying not to project my misery when I have it onto other people to drag them down to my level. I try to do that, to not do that every single day. And to have a character who blatantly doesn't do that, and in the end even being rewarded for being that kind of asshole, feels like a slap in the face, actually. And I'm really sure, I'm almost certain that that's not what Joe Abercrombie intended. And I see why Sand Dan Glokta is written the way he is and all of that. I get that on a like intellectual level. On a rational level, I get all of these things. But reading it again and reading like all these like parts where he's like super like feeling self-pity and self-recriminating, well, not that much, and still staying in that cycle of self-pity and projecting misery, and not trying to overcome any of that. I'm not saying that you can overcome it. I can't. But the point is, I'm at least trying, and he doesn't, and then he gets rewarded for it. And that made me so fucking angry at the end. And I just, wanted to explain why that gave me such an like strong emotional response. And I'm not sure if I know how to actually do it better. I'm not sure if it's possible to do it better. I just feel that this, as a whole, the way it is handled with Sand Dan Glokta is a bit of a cheap way out to do it for shock value, and for shock value, and the putting it into the overall like cynical lookout like worldview that obviously the first Law trilogy in general does. I'm still not saying I hate the books or anything. I'm just saying that this character and the way he was handled there just made me feel really uncomfortable from time to time, and made me feel really angry because, yeah, as someone who tries to not fall down that rabbit hole, to have a character who does that and still gets rewarded, and there's like no, like, I don't know, there's no way out or anything like that. And that just, made me feel bad. So I figured I'll just, ramble about it for a couple of minutes, and maybe some of you will understand, or maybe you'll all tell me that I should, I don't know, not be bothered by this kind of thing, but I just wanted to put it out there. Anyway, thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you later about Malazan and more misery. Until then, cheers.